How about a little politics now to the race for the White House? A new national poll out today shows Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump neck and neck. The poll comes from Quinnipiac University. It has Clinton at 42% and Trump just 2 points behind at 40%. CBS News senior political editor Steve Chaggaris joins us from Washington, and Caitlin Huey-Burns with Real Clear Politics, national political reporter, is here with me on set. Thank you both for joining us. Steve, I want to take it to you first. What do you make of this new poll?
Well, I'm skipping the horse race numbers for now. They're all over the place this week. This one shows her up 2. There was one on Sunday that showed her up 12 points. I mean, I think we can say she's up. But what's interesting here to me is how much voters dislike both candidates in this poll. Both have 57% unfavorable ratings. A majority are saying that neither would be a good president. But on the plus side, more say Trump would be better at creating jobs and handling ISIS, 2 issues that Clinton and Democrats have attacked him on the past 2 weeks. And voters are saying that Clinton is better prepared to be president. So there's a lot to unpack there besides the horse race numbers.
Steve was saying the numbers are a little bit all over the place, Caitlin, but we know that these numbers from Quinnipiac kind of similar to the numbers we're seeing with our CBS News Battleground polls. Despite the gaps, despite sometimes people call outlandish statements that Trump has made, he's still doing well. Is that a problem for Hillary Clinton?
Well, this is a race that's going to be determined in these battleground states. We like to say it's a national campaign, but traditionally these presidential races come down to a handful of states. And so it makes sense that these states are showing competitive polling numbers. It's a polarized country. Republicans and Democrats are going to attract respective parts of their bases. The question is, how wide or how close that gap gets in places like Ohio, Florida, Colorado, among others. And so we're now starting to see Donald Trump actually campaign in battleground states. He hasn't done that since effectively clinching the nomination. Hillary Clinton has been spending a lot of time in Ohio. She was there earlier this week with Elizabeth Warren. Donald Trump visited Ohio last night for a rally, also gave a trade policy speech in Pennsylvania. So they're really targeting those states. Hillary Clinton notably has been on air and Trump has not. She has a really robust ground game strategy and on-air strategy. We haven't seen Trump yet spend money on things like advertising. So those kinds of things can help affect the outcome as we speak right now in June and coming up to July, what this race looks like right now. We still have several months to go.
It's not just Clinton and Trump. Apparently, Steve, there's also Quinnipiac looked at the Libertarian candidate, Gary Johnson, in a poll. I found this fascinating. Clinton still maintains a slim lead, but more interestingly, Johnson actually picks up 8% of the vote. Could he play spoiler come November like Ross Perot, Ralph Nader?
Well, as Caitlin said, this is an election that is, presidential elections are fought in the states. It's not a national election. And so, he's got 8% nationally. Doesn't really matter in the grand scheme is where is he in key battleground states. That's what we're going to be really looking closely at. Look at what happened with Ross Perot and Ralph Nader. Well, back then, Nader only received 1.6% of the vote in Florida, yet turned Florida into the real battleground in 2000 and affected the election. It wasn't his national numbers, which are only around 3%. It was that small number in Florida. So that's what we're really going to be looking at is where does Gary Johnson fall in these battleground states? Does he take votes away from Clinton or Trump? And does he throw the election one way or another because of some small percentage that he gets in one of the battleground states?
That's interesting. So it's not the big number you're watching. It's the smaller numbers in the battleground states. I want to also ask you, July 5th, mark your calendars, folks. President Obama will finally be campaigning with Hillary Clinton, their first event actually together since she's become the presumptive nominee. How do you think this is going to impact the race, Caitlin?
Well, this is going to be a big event. I mean, the president has endorsed Clinton. She has been trying to build upon and expand in some ways his winning coalitions of 2008 and 2012. She's campaigning very much on his legacy in terms of policy, in terms of approach to certain demographics and such. So this is going to be an important moment for her campaign. He hasn't campaigned for her in full force yet, and he figures to be an influential force on the campaign trail among Democrats. And this also comes at a notable time because we're seeing in polls that his approval ratings are pretty steady and actually hitting their highest points so far in the past several years, hitting above the majority.
Fascinating, because previous presidents have not had that same good fortune, and so there's been a distance between the running, the presumptive nominee, and the actual president. Before we go, I want to ask you both, with the terror attacks in Turkey, a new poll shows that voters actually believe that Trump will be more effective against ISIS if these attacks continue with the same frequency. So, favoring Trump here, does Hillary Clinton need to kind of readjust her strategy on terror?
I don't know if she needs to readjust her strategy. Her strategy has really been to paint him as not ready to be president, as not having the temperament to be president, and then also highlighting her experience and her successes as Secretary of State. And so I think that's really the best argument she can make at this point. And it's really going to be up to voters to look at these two candidates who, as we mentioned earlier, don't really have a lot of love for either of them, to make up their minds on whether her argument works or his argument works. I mean, he seems to be doing pretty well generally on the ISIS question. But interestingly, after the Orlando attacks, it seemed polling showed that voters didn't really like Trump's reaction to that. So we'll see if he can sustain this on the ISIS question. But for her, I'm not sure there is much of a strategy shift she could actually do.
Caitlin?
I agree with that. And also, it's interesting, we saw Trump last night take a really tough stance on this issue. He talked about his support for waterboarding. He talked about fighting fire with fire. And those are very controversial statements, but they do resonate with his base of support, people who like the fact that he's kind of talking tough on terror. It's a weakness they perceive in the current administration, and then by virtue of that, Hillary Clinton. So that's the argument that he's trying to make. Again, it depends on what voters are feeling, especially at that moment. We've seen over the course of the past few weeks that global events can affect the outcome of these kinds of things.
Certainly
so
do.
Wait to see what this looks like in November.
Still a long ways away, even though it doesn't feel like it.
Right.
Caitlin Huey-Burns and Steve Chaggaris, thank you both for joining us.
Thanks, Maria.